You ever just grab a jug of oil, pour it in, and think, good to go? Yeah, most folks do, especially when the cap says 0W-20 in bold letters like it's gospel. But let me tell you something I don't say lightly. I've personally torn down over 50 engines in the last 5 years where the wrong oil choice, often one that was technically correct per the manual, quietly, slowly, and completely unnecessarily chewed up bearings, wiped camshafts, or turned piston rings into dust. And in nearly every single case, the owner looked me dead in the eye and said, "But I followed the manual to the letter." So what gives? Why are engines failing early, even with perfect maintenance? And why does this debate between 0W-20 and 5W-30 matter more now than ever? Stick with me, because what I'm about to share isn't theory. It's not marketing fluff from an oil rep or a corporate service bulletin. This is real metal, real wear patterns, real customers crying in my bay because their reliable car just dropped a rod at 70,000 miles. And in a lot of those cases, the oil grade played a bigger role than anyone realized. Let's start with busting the biggest myth head on. Thinner oil equals better fuel economy, so it's always better. On paper? Yeah, that's true. In a controlled lab with a brand new engine on a dynamometer, 0W-20 reduces internal friction just enough to squeeze out an extra 0.2 or 0.3 mpg. Over a fleet of millions of cars, that adds up to billions in CAFE, corporate average fuel economy, compliance credits. But your daily drive ain't a lab. You're not cruising at 55 miles per hour on a flat road in 72-degree weather. You're stuck in stop-and-go traffic, hauling a trailer up a mountain pass, idling with the AC on full blast in 100-degree heat, or doing short trips where the engine never even hits full operating temperature. In those real-world conditions, that super-thin 0W-20 can get too thin too fast. I saw a 2021 Toyota Camry come into the shop last year. 68,000 miles, all oil changes done on time, always used the recommended 0W-20, but the owner lived in Phoenix and drove 45 minutes each way to work, mostly highway, in summer temps that regularly hit 115 degrees F. One day he heard a knock. By the time he got to me, it was a full-blown rod knock. We pulled the pan, and the main bearings looked like someone had taken a cheese grater to them. Why? Because at sustained high temps, the 0W-20 lost its film strength. It couldn't maintain that critical oil cushion between the crankshaft and the bearing surface. Metal, touch metal. Game over. And that wasn't a one-off. I've seen it in Hondas, Nissans, even some newer Fords. All by the book. All failed early, all because the oil that was technically correct wasn't practically right for how the car was actually being used. So let's talk about what those numbers actually mean, because most people think 0W-20 is just a code, like a password, but it's not. It's a promise about how the oil behaves. The W stands for winter, so the first number, 0W, tells you how well it flows at cold temperatures. A 0W oil flows almost like water at minus 35 degrees C or minus 31 F. That's great for cold starts because it gets to critical parts faster, reducing wear in those first 30 seconds, the most damaging moments in an engine's life. The second number, 20, tells you its viscosity, its thickness at 100 degrees C, 212 F, which is standard operating temperature. So 0W-20 is very thin when hot. Now compare that to 5W-30. The 5W means it's slightly thicker in the cold, but still plenty fluid for most climates. The real difference is that 30 at operating temperature. That oil is about 50% thicker than 20 weight when hot. And that extra thickness? That's your safety margin. That's what keeps metal from touching metal when things get hot, stressed, worn. Think of it like clothing. 0W-20 is a silk sheet, light, fast, perfect for a mild night. But if a storm hits, you're soaked. 5W-30 is a denim jacket, maybe a little heavier to put on, but it'll protect you when the wind kicks up. And in an engine, the storm is heat, load, age, and wear. Let me give you 2 real case studies that show how dramatically climate and usage change everything. First, a 2019 Toyota Tundra in Mesa, Arizona. Owner was a contractor, towed a 6,000-pound equipment trailer 3 days a week through the Sonoran Desert. He followed Toyota's recommendation to the letter. 0W-20 changed every 10,000 miles with synthetic. At 72,000 miles, his truck started making a weird ticking noise under acceleration. He brought it in thinking it was lifters. We pulled the valve cover, and his cam lobes were worn down. Not just a little, they were rounded off like someone sanded them smooth. Why? Because under extreme heat and constant load, the 0W-20 couldn't maintain enough oil pressure or film strength on the cam journals. The lobes were literally grinding against the followers. We switched him to full synthetic 5W-30, adjusted his oil change interval to 7,500 miles, and 2 years later, quiet as a library. No more oil consumption, no more noise. The engine thanked him. Now, flip the script. A 2020 Honda Civic in Duluth, Minnesota. Guy drove it to work 10 miles each way in winter temps that dropped to minus 25 degrees. He used 0W-20 and it was perfect for cold starts. But come July, when he'd take weekend trips up to the Boundary Waters at 70 miles per hour for 2 hours straight, the engine would start making a slap-slap noise, piston slap. We scoped it, checked compression, ran oil analysis, and everything pointed to oil thinning out too much at sustained highway temps. The 0W-20 was great for minus 20 F, but lousy for 90 degrees F ambient with a hot engine under load. We switched him to 5W-30 in the spring, and the slap vanished by summer. Same engine, same driver, just smarter oil for the actual conditions. And that's the key most people miss. Your manual gives you a baseline, not a lifetime sentence. Automakers design for the average driver, in average conditions. But if you're towing, racing, living in Death Valley or Fairbanks, or your car's got over 80,000 miles, you're not average, and your oil shouldn't be either. Now, why are manufacturers pushing 0W-20 so hard? Let's be honest, it's not about your engine's longevity. It's about fuel economy regulations. Every tenth of a mile per gallon counts when you're trying to meet federal CAFE standards. Thinner oil equals less internal drag, better test numbers. And those numbers determine whether a manufacturer pays billions in fines or gets credits to sell to Tesla. So they design engines with ultra-tight tolerances that require low-viscosity oil to function properly. But only for the first 100,000 miles. Here's the dirty secret. Warranty coverage ends at 100K. Engine life doesn't. If your car lasts 200,000 miles, that's on you, not Toyota, Honda, or Ford. They've already made their profit. They don't sleep over your spun bearing at 120K. But I do, because you're standing in my bay looking at a $4,000 repair bill, wondering how this happened when you did everything right. So, that said, 0W-20 isn't evil. In the right application, it's brilliant. Modern turbocharged direct injection engines like Ford's 2.3-liter EcoBoost, GM's 2.0-liter Turbo 4s, or Subaru's FA24 are engineered around low-viscosity oil. The oil pump is smaller, the turbo bearings are tighter, and the piston cooling jets rely on quick flow. In those engines, 5W-30 can actually cause problems. Slower oil pressure buildup, higher temps, even oil aeration. So, if you've got a 2023 Mustang EcoBoost or a WRX, stick with 0W-20. But, and this is critical, you've got to treat that engine gently and change the oil early and often. Miss a few changes or hammer the throttle daily, and that precision machine turns into a grenade. So what's my rule of thumb after 30 years, thousands of oil changes, and dozens of postmortems on failed engines? If your car is over 80,000 miles, lives in extreme heat or cold, tows regularly, or you drive it hard, switch to 5W-30. And don't worry about cold starts. Today's full synthetic 5W-30 oils flow nearly as well at minus 30 F as 0W-20 did 15 years ago. The additive packages are that good. In fact, many of the high-mileage synthetics like Mobil 1 High Mileage or Castrol Edge High Mileage are formulated with extra detergents and seal conditioners that actually protect older engines better than the thin stuff ever could. Here's something even most mechanics won't tell you. Some dealers quietly switch loyal customers to 5W-30 after 60,000 miles, even if the cap says 0W-20. I've talked to service advisors who admit it. Why? Because they've seen the same damage that I have. They know that while the manual says one thing, real-world durability demands another. And they'd rather keep you coming back for oil changes than hear you say, I had to junk my car at 90K. And now I know what some of you are thinking. But Tony, Won't using 5W-30 void my warranty? Only if you're still under warranty, and even then only if the failure is directly tied to the oil. But here's the kicker. Most warranty claims for engine failure get denied anyway unless you have perfect service records. And even then, they'll blame abuse or contaminated oil. So if you're fast 70K, warranty is probably off the table. At that point, you're maintaining for longevity, not compliance. And let's talk about oil changes for a second, because viscosity is only half the battle. I've seen people use the perfect 5W-30 but stretch their oil to 15,000 miles because the computer says it's fine. Bad idea. Modern oil life monitors are based on ideal driving. Short trips, dusty roads, extreme temps, your oil degrades faster. I tell my customers, if you're using 0W-20 in harsh conditions, change it every 5,000 miles.
If you switch to 5W-30, you can stretch to 7,500, but never more than 10,000 no matter what the sticker says. One last thing, don't fall for the all oils are the same trap. Not all 5W-30s are created equal. Go full synthetic. Look for API SP or ILSAC GF6 certification. And if your engine burns oil or has over 75,000 miles, consider a high mileage formula. Those extra conditioners can recondition dried seals and reduce consumption, something I've seen work miracles on older V6 Toyotas and Nissan VQ engines. So where does this leave you? If you drive a brand new turbo engine in mild conditions and change oil religiously, stick with 0W-20. If you've got an older NA engine, live in the desert or the tundra, tow, or just want your car to last 200,000 miles, 5W-30 is your best friend. Because at the end of the day, oil isn't just lubrication, it's liquid armor. And you wouldn't wear a raincoat into a blizzard, so why protect your engine with oil that's too thin for the job? Hit that like button if this saved you from a future engine rebuild, and drop a comment below. What's in your car right now? 0W-20 or 5W-30? And have you ever switched because of wear, climate, or mileage? Because here's the truth they won't print in the owner's manual. The right oil won't just keep your engine running, it'll keep it running for decades. And that peace of mind, that's worth every penny. I'm Tony, the Honest Mechanic, and I'll see you in the next bay.